Micah, welcome to the show. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. This is an honor.
Now, Micah, you and I have briefly talked on Facebook Messenger. Can you tell everybody, like, how did we run into each other? How did we end up here?
Well, we're both in the Badass Business Babes group, and
Woo!
I know, love that group. I
I
love
know.
Lauren, and um, we connected over a post in that group, and I think we have both the same mindset, and so we just kind of hit it off and started a conversation and took it from there.
And I just have to say, like, I just started asking Micah about her journey from working full time to being an entrepreneur to what she does now. And I'm like, okay, I need to interview you for the podcast because I want people to know what is possible. Because recently I have been talking, and this is so pertinent. This is so good. So recently I've been talking to people about the opportunity tree. That's what I call it when basically every new opportunity that you have, if you take advantage of it, it just kind of starts opening up your world exponentially. So the fact that you and I connected, it wasn't just like a, hey, I need this. Okay, here you go. Okay, see you later. Have a good life. We actually started talking, and this wouldn't have happened if you, Micah, if you hadn't been so forthcoming, so sweet, so nice. So like,
Oh,
if this hadn't been like a two-way street. So
right.
I always tell people that they have to just take advantage of opportunities, right? To not just let an opportunity go by. So if I had an opportunity to connect with you, it wasn't just because like, oh, I want to sell her something, and if she's not my target audience, I'm going to go and turn away.
Yeah.
Is no, what can come from this? How can we help each other out? How can we prop each other? So I really want to put that out there because like opportunity is like huge. Have you found that in your journey?
Oh, I mean, I'm where I'm at right now because of it. When something presents itself, I used to shut it off and say no and hide in my fear and not want to do anything because of the fear of what could come from that instead of thinking what good things could come from it. I always thought, well, what bad things could come from it? And when I changed that mindset and was like, no, what good things could come from me doing this, from me taking this leap, it opened up so many doors and got me where I'm at right now, living the life that I had always wanted to.
So why don't we start there? Why don't we start with your story? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your life working full time was? What did you do? What was that situation like? Did you like what you did? Like let us get into the head of Micah back then.
All right. Well, I went to college, and I think a lot of the issues started in that because when we go to college, we're fresh out of high school, we're 18 years old, and they want answers of what you want to do for the rest of your life right then. You
Yeah,
have to
right.
declare it in that moment,
Yeah,
and you haven't even experienced life yet.
right.
And
Right.
so I went into college and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but yet here were, my parents and, advisors and the school, everybody wanting to know, well, no, you need to know at this moment what you want to do at 18 years old for the rest of your life.
Right.
And I remember sitting in my advisor's office and she was like, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know what I want to do. And she was like, well, what do you like? And one of the things she said, what is one of your biggest hobbies? And I love to read, right? I'm a big book fanatic. And I said, well, I enjoy reading. And she was like, well, why don't you get a degree in English? And I was like, okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I was
Sure.
like, okay, not really thinking what I could do with an English degree. At the time I was just like,
Right.
well, that'll get me through 4 years of college, maybe enjoying myself because, math wasn't my thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I, proceeded in English. And whenever I graduated, I was like, oh no, I
Right.
don't want to be an English teacher. So what am I going to do?
Right.
And I found myself working for an international trade publication that dealt with petroleum products.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was. And it was good. I learned a lot and I love learning new things. So that was nice. And I love the people I worked with,
Mm-hmm.
but I would sit there and think there's got to be more. Like I couldn't picture myself in that position for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so I started, thinking, well, what do I want to do? And, I've always loved sports. So then I was like, well, maybe I'll go into sports. And I actually quit my job to pursue going into sports.
Wait a minute. So wait a second.
Yes.
How long were you in that job for?
A year and a half.
Okay, so that's, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. Like that's
Right.
you actually were there enough time to get comfortable in that job. So really, what gave you, the kick to say you need to do something else?
I think it was the fear of living a mediocre life,
Yeah.
and I just was like, I know I'm meant for more. And I didn't know exactly what, but I knew I wanted to be bigger, and that role was going to be very limiting for me. And
Yeah.
I think I got to the point where I was like, this is not, I'm still in the city I grew up in, and there's so much more to experience. And it wasn't fulfilling me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I've got to figure something out. And so I quit right before my 24th, 25th birthday, something like that. And was like, I gotta get out there. And so I went
Can I,
into that.
can I just say, like, super quick, because I want to get into the sports, because I don't even know which sport you went into. I just have to say, like, you were so lucky to experience quitting your job so early on,
Yes.
because so many of us like get stuck in thinking, no, I can't quit. I have, they're setting up a good path for me. This is a good job. I'm making good money. I have to stay. I have to stay. And the longer you put off actually making a change, the harder it actually gets. But once you quit the first time, it actually becomes easier to
It
quit the
does.
second time and to quit the third time, because you start realizing, like, oh, there are other fish in the sea. There are other opportunities out there. So you are so lucky to have been able to experience that first shot early on.
Yeah.
I'm in like, I'm like drooling here. So I'm so jealous. I wish I'd had that courage when I was 24. So what sport are we talking about?
I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but NASCAR. Yes,
No.
I'm a huge NASCAR fan, and I knew I wanted to travel and broadcast with NASCAR, and I applied while I was working at that other job. I wasn't qualified. I didn't have any broadcast experience, but I made the connections. I would find issues on their websites or in their social media, because that was still kind of new at the time. And I would say, you're not engaging enough on, this, like your Facebook page, or whatever. And I would say, let me come work for you, and I can change that. And I actually made some really big connections in the NASCAR industry by doing that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to quit. I'm going to move to Charlotte, North Carolina, where their headquarters is at. And I'm going to do the thing there. And this is it. And right after I quit, my mom had like 7 strokes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so at that point I was like, well, I can't leave. Like, this isn't doable. I cannot leave, because, I saw it as I quit because now I was able to take care of my mom, while everybody else, had their jobs. And so I put the sports on the back burner. Then at the same time I met my now ex, and eventually I moved with him. We started having babies, and I became a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And anybody who is a stay-at-home mom, and mother in general, but will tell you how lonely it is. And even though you're constantly surrounded, by your children whom you love, and, your spouse, it can be really lonely and unfulfilling at times.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I started thinking, again, there's something more for me out there. Like, I love my kids, but I want to do more, so I can do more with them. And experience life from a feeling fulfilled at the end of every day, instead of feeling stressed and overwhelmed. And it wasn't good for me, and it wasn't good for my kids. It wasn't good for my relationship.
Yeah.
And so I started looking for, jobs. What can I do, to feel fulfilled?
Yeah.
And then I started going into all these dead-end jobs. And again, like you said, once you quit once, it's easier to recognize when you're in another dead-end position again, and you're
Right.
not feeling fulfilled, that you can quit that one.
Yeah.
And so I would start working, and then I'd be like, no, this isn't it. And I'd quit that. And then I'd get another job and be like, nope, this one's not it either.
Right.
So, and then, the stress from that, and the feeling of overwhelm, and it took a toll on me as a mom, and it took a toll on my relationship.
Yeah.
And, our relationship got really rocky and it wasn't getting any better. And I think we were both playing from a place of fear that we both didn't know how to take the step forward without losing ourselves even more. And eventually, our relationship fell apart. And so I moved my kids and myself back home, 8 hours away, back home, moved in with my mom, and I was in my 30s, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, this is not what I pictured my life to be like. Right. And I was at rock bottom, and I started really doing some soul searching. And I was like, okay, I've got to figure out what I want to do with my life. Yeah. And I came across the book by Jen Sincero, You Are a Badass. Have you read that?
Yes, I actually. No. For anybody who can see the video, my husband got me like the pocket version.
Yes.
And it came with a button. Hold on. It came with a button that you push. What? And let me see. Hold on. Let me see what it's going to say. There's like 4 phrases in here.
You are a badass.
So yeah, I'm aware. I'm aware.
Very familiar with it then.
Yes. Here we go.
Well, that book really, it started making me think more in a different way than what I've ever thought before. And really, instead of blaming all these outside forces as to why my life wasn't the way I wanted it to be, I started looking inward, right? Yeah. And I just started thinking, what can I do? I can't change anybody else. I can't change any other situation, but I can change myself and I can change my mindset on things. And I really just started from there and started this self-discovery, and it catapulted me out of a depression, and it really started making me think, instead of playing in these small limiting beliefs and not wanting to play big because I was so afraid of what could fail coming from that. Right. I started saying yes to like every opportunity that came my way. Right. And by saying yes, another door would open. And by saying yes again, another door would open. And then I started playing on manifesting, what I wanted by the end of the year. And I was like, I'm going to live in this house. I'm going to buy my kids and myself like my first house. And I had a vision of what the house is going to look like, the layout, the neighborhood it was going to be in. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, by September of that year, I had found a job that allowed me to work from home, which is something I had to have because my kids were so small still. Yeah. And I had a good enough salary at the time to purchase my house. Yeah. And I found the perfect house, the one that I had envisioned in my mind. And so I got the house. We closed last year in November, so I've almost been here for a year now.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And then I started realizing the job that I was in was another dead-end job.
Yeah.
And I think when people are born, there's people who are so okay with being like an employee of somebody else. And that's great. And at times I was so jealous of that feeling of, I wish I was content working for somebody else. I wish I was content of like not having this urge to take the lead or this urge to do more, because so many people seem so content in what they were doing. And here I was like, every position I just felt so unfulfilled. And I was like, this isn't right. This isn't what I'm meant to do. Yeah. And I think there's people who are born with that entrepreneurial mindset, where they constantly are in the search for something and they don't know what it is. And so it leads them from, I think, job hopping from one thing to another in search of like what's going to fulfill me, when really it's something that you need to create yourself.
Right. Okay. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm like writing notes frantically because, here's the deal. If anybody's listening out there who, this world of entrepreneurship is like new to them, right? They may be thinking, the way that I was when I first started my business. Because like you said, I was one of those people. I'm like, I know there's more. And I have a journal that I have kept since 2003 that says like, on the first page, it says, I wrote a list, like a bucket list of things that I wanted to do. And one of them was to be able to quit my job to pursue a dream. So from the very beginning, I knew that I wasn't going to stay working for somebody else forever, right? But I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that looked like. I had no idea what mindset was, let alone manifestation. I ran into manifestation this year. All right. Like all of this stuff is new. So what I want people who are listening to understand is that when we talk about entrepreneurship, Mike and I are talking about an entire world that exists, that we live in, that when we were working full time, we had no idea about. It's seriously like two completely different universes.
Oh,
so,
completely.
Right? It's a completely different world. So what I want to get people who are listening to this out of this is that I want you to know that there is something else out there, and there's a whole lot of people like me and Micah who are now in that world and enjoying what that freedom feels like, right? So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about mindset.
Okay.
So I had no idea what this was. I thought, I was going to work in corporate forever. And then back in 2011, I'm like, no, I want to start a business. But still, I didn't know about this whole world of entrepreneurs that existed. I didn't join any communities. I didn't know what building an audience was. I didn't know how to use social media effectively. I just kind of like, okay, I'm going to sell websites. I'm just going to make websites and just, be here in my little corner with my bookcase and like program my sites and get my money at the end of the month. And that's it, right? I have a business. And it wasn't until maybe 3 years ago that, a friend of mine, and this is where like the opportunity tree situation goes, right? It's like saying yes to opportunities. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, a friend of mine told me, hey, let's do a mastermind. I'm like, what's a mastermind? She's like, we just get together and give each other feedback. We meet on a weekly basis. We tell each other what we're doing and what we want to do. And we just keep each other accountable. We ask each other tough questions. I'm like, that sounds good, because I've always wanted to do something like this. So I went on my podcast app and I looked up, okay, let me see what people are saying about masterminds. I've never heard of this before. And I downloaded most of them, like 5 episodes from different podcasts of people talking about masterminds. And one of them was Amy Porterfield's podcast.
Nice. Yes.
I like struck gold, right?
Yes.
Like I had no idea, right?
Universe led you there.
I know.
Yeah.
So, and there were a few of them that were like about masterminds. There was one podcast that was all about masterminds. That's all it was about. Yeah. And I actually stayed tuned to a few of them, and I started dropping off, unsubscribing to them. And Amy Porterfield is the one that stuck, right? Yes. She was speaking to me. She was saying, you can actually have financial freedom. You can have a flexibility in your schedule. So then I started joining her group. I started going to her webinars. And at the time, I didn't have an investment mindset. I was like, I have my money and I'm going to keep it really close. And I'm just going to learn as much as I can for free. I am a very resourceful person. I am a very smart person. I don't need to pay anybody for any of this.
Yes.
So because I had that mindset, I would just go to her webinars and I would not sign up for anything. I would just listen. I would just consume. I would make my notes. But then there was one that like I literally could not stop myself from signing up for. Wow. And it was her list builders course. Oh. So it was a webinar all about like, how do you build a mailing list? And I didn't know anything about this. So she sold her course, and at the time it was $97. I think it must be like $297. But because I was keeping my money so tight, I was actually hogging all of the money that my business was making, and I was paying $1 million in taxes, not literally $1 million.
Right, but yes.
I was giving it all away to the government because I wasn't using it. So I'm like, okay, I should start spending money so my business can afford to spend $97. And that's kind of like how it all started. This was 3 years ago. I started really getting into like the Facebook groups situation, right? Everybody who's doing this. And then this year I run into manifestation.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me, can you tell me a little bit of your running into this magical concept of manifestation? I have some views and I will share them, but awesome. I want to know, like, when was the first time that you heard about this manifestation concept and how did it help you?
It was actually in the book, You Are a Badass. She scrapes the surface on it. She doesn't go extremely deep into it, but it all plays with that mindset, right? So it's all what you want, you have to act like you already have. Mm-hmm. And I would go into job interviews because I was so good at doing interviews, but so many jobs I interviewed for. And I would go into the job interview as if I had already had the job. And I actually learned that on Oprah years ago when she was still back on, cable.
Yeah.
He had interviewed an interview expert, and he had said, you have to walk in like you already own the position. So you don't, sit straight up and act very timid, like somebody would. You sit back like a CEO and you engage them on more of a personal level and bring the tension in the room down to where it's more comfortable. And then they leave with that feeling of, oh, it was really easy and comfortable to talk to them, versus, somebody who's like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, you know what I mean? And so I was already doing that in my job interviews without realizing it. And I would be offered these jobs, and some jobs I wasn't even qualified for, and they would offer me the job with it.
Right.
And whenever I started reading You Are a Badass, I kind of realized where I had already played into that and where it was working out. And so I was like, okay, well, what else can I do? Let's, and they say when you start doing it, to play it small, test it out and see if you can, manifest a cup of coffee, like a free cup of coffee or something the next day. Somebody buys you a cup of coffee. Start small with things. But of course, I don't start small. I'm like, go big or go home. So I was like, well, what can I do? How can I get, something going for myself? And I started, in order to manifest what you want, you have to be an energetic match for it. And I knew I was still vibrating at a low frequency. I was putting off this low energy. I was still struggling with my self-worth from, a bad relationship and just not feeling fulfilled. And I started saying, okay, I need to raise my frequency. How can I raise my frequency to match what I want to draw into my life? And so I started with affirmations and reminding myself, repeating all day long, writing notes all around my house, sticking them on my fridge, on my mirror. I have alerts on my phone still every day that go off that, I sit with these positive thoughts that, help me feel better. And then every night before I would go to sleep, and I still do this, I have a gratitude list, and I go through like at least 10 things that I am grateful for and, give thanks. And I even give thanks for things that haven't come my way yet, but I am confident that they are coming my way. Mm-hmm. And as I raised my frequency, my demeanor changed, my attitude changed. People started coming up to me and saying, something's different about you. You just, like, you seem happier. And I'd be like, I am happy. Like, I actually felt happier. And every day I wasn't waking up, feeling dreadful. And I wasn't thinking like, well, what's today going to bring? Instead I was like, well, what's today going to, It was this whole mindset shift. And so I started thinking, well, what can I bring in? And at the time I had left my relationship and I had moved back home. So I didn't have a job. And I was like, I need a job. I want to buy a house this year. So I need a job that makes so much money a year in order for me to live comfortably with my kids. I want to work from home. And so I just started putting this thought out into the universe. And I was like, I need this. I need this. I need this. And I had a license in insurance. And I was just working kind of part-time as a producer, wasn't making hardly any money at all. Mm-hmm. And a course appeared for insurance that was way out of my budget. And it was like $2,000 for somebody who made like maybe $400 a month, Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? Something's telling me to go after, something's telling me to say yes to this opportunity of this marketing course. I have to take this. And so I put $2,000 on my credit card, and it's all about, investing in yourself and saying yes to things. And so I put $2,000 on my credit card. I went into this marketing course for insurance agents, and I actually hit it off with the two owners pretty well. And they offered me a position to work for them that was salary based. It met my minimum requirements that I needed. They allowed me to work from home. They said family comes first. So if you need, to work with your kids' school schedules and stuff, you can do that. And basically it was, at the time, the job that I needed to have to get the other things that I wanted. And if I wouldn't have said yes to this other opportunity, this one would have never have surfaced. Right. And because of that, I was like, holy cow, like I manifested the requirements, not necessarily staying in insurance and marketing, but I didn't care at the time what it was. I just knew I needed this amount of money because I wanted to purchase these things by the end of the year, and I needed all of this to do that. And sure enough, it just fell in my lap, and I was like, holy cow, this works.
Okay, so now I'm going to translate everything that you just said
Okay.
for people who have never
No
heard
idea.
of this. All right? Because I'm going to tell you, when this is explained, it just sounds like magic. It
Yes.
sounds like it sounds like you have to believe that the universe is like an entity that is dishing out stuff. And then you're just kind of like waiting for it. Like, when is it going to be my turn for the universe to give me free stuff?
Right.
So that's what it sounds like, which is why people go like, well, that's woo-woo. That,
Exactly. Yes.
right? Like, that would never work. Okay, I'm going to say right now, okay, universe, give me $1,000. And then at the end of the week, I'm going to be like, see, it didn't happen. It doesn't exist. It doesn't work. So I'm going to translate everything you said in how I've internalized it, right? Because I don't believe in magic. I believe in hard work and the power of your mind over body and over your situation. So I'm going to translate all of that, and this is how I explain manifestation to people. So, because you're gonna hear a lot of people saying that. A lot of people, like, I joined manifestation Facebook groups, and there are so many people who say, I tried to manifest this and it didn't happen. What happened? I'm like, did you really think there was somebody out there just like, giving stuff away and they missed you? No,
Just
this
sit
is
at your house and wait for it to come to you. Yeah.
exactly, this is not how manifestation works. And I'm going to tell you how I explain this to myself. Manifestation has a really strong foundation in your own mindset about your own life and about the expectations of what you can do in your life. So let's imagine two people. One person says, they're both into manifestation, let's say. One person says, they have a low self-esteem. They don't believe that they can make it. They see, people being successful, and they feel like, well, that's not me. I have this job. I'm just going to stay in this job. So, like, it's what you would say, like, they have a low frequency, right? Like, they have their energy levels are low.
Yes.
Right? But they believe in manifestation. They believe that if they make a vision board, things will happen for them. Right? And then you have the other person who firmly believes their destiny is in their hands. They believe that they are the ones manifesting things. Manifestation is not something that the universe is dishing to them. It's something that they can make happen for themselves. And it starts with their own mindset and their own beliefs about what is possible. So these are the kinds of people, just like you said, these are the kind of people who start thinking, I'm going to walk into that job and believe I already got it. So if you just think about that, it's not that the universe is looking at you and saying, oh, she deserves it. Let's give it to her. This is not how it works. It's you are immediately making yourself a much more confident person, right? So when you believe that anything is possible, there's no way that you can lose, because you will be taking those big leaps, right? So if you think of manifestation kind of like a staircase, right? Like you started saying, start with something small. Start with trying to manifest a cup of coffee, right? That's kind of like the first step, right? But you have to believe that the ladder is there. You have to believe that you can continue to take steps towards your own fulfillment, towards your own future, that every step is an investment in yourself. And when you invest in yourself, it comes back to you. That's the definition of an investment, is you put something down and you get more in return, right? If you don't believe that, you will quit prematurely. You will sit in your couch and say, I did enough. Now let's wait for the universe to provide, right? You will think that you're stuck in your situation and not take control. So these two people who believe in manifestation are living completely different lives. And the one will tell you manifestation doesn't really work, and the other will tell you it absolutely works, right?
So true.
So this is how I explain it to people. It's not woo-woo. It's not the universe dishing out stuff and you waiting for your turn. But if you study what manifestation teaches you, your own self-confidence, it just takes such a leap that, and confident people who believe that anything is possible will go and take the leap like you did. Put down $2,000 on a credit card because you know that your future is bright and that something will come out of this, right? And you can start already to see those benefits coming back at you.
Yes.
So this is exactly how I phrase it to people. So that they understand, so they don't go like, well, that's a terrible idea to walk around feeling like you're a millionaire, right? I'm like, why? What's wrong with that?
Right.
Right. So so I've actually been following Manifestation Babe. Are you familiar with
Yes, Catherine.
Catherine Zankina? And I have to tell you, I'm gonna be honest with you because I didn't know anything about manifestation. In fact, my coach was the one who told me you need to work on your mindset. Go listen to Catherine. I'm like, okay. So the first episode that I listened to of hers, I believe it's episode number 38, I think. I don't remember. Might be 38. The episode of her podcast, Manifestation Babe podcast. It's called the Millionaire episode. And it's the episode where she says she just made $1 million in her business, right? So I went straight to that because I'm a very analytical person. And I'm like, how did she do that?
Yes, right. Yes.
Don't come and tell me that she manifested $1 million business. I want to know what she did.
What steps did she take? Yes.
Right. So I started basically studying her as a business person, as an entrepreneur. And so, but the more that I listened to her, the more these teachings about mindset and manifestation and believing in yourself and believing that you have a bright future, all that stuff started to sink in. So in a way, I started to work on my own mindset and believing that and believing in investing in myself and believing that anything is possible and that basically if you don't stop, if you don't quit, you can't lose. Right? Because there's so many people out there who start, feel like it didn't work out, and then they quit. You never hear about people who quit, right? Because they quit, right? The people who succeeded are the people who decided not to quit.
Yes.
So I would love to hear more about your business, about, how you went from, where you were, you had just gotten the job, with insurance. How did that turn into your business, and what is your business?
Well, my business is I'm a spiritual life and mindset coach. Mm-hmm. And so I basically teach all of these things with, where you are at on the inside and where your mind is at and how you approach things. I provide the tools for women to go into decision making away from how they used to think through things. And sometimes, like, to me now, it's so obvious, but I have to put myself back in my shoes where I was, 2 years ago, whenever I was just getting started into this, where I had no idea about any of this stuff. And so I have to put myself in those shoes again to remind myself, like, no, there are so many people out there who still don't understand this. And a lot of times success lies on the other side of where you want to quit at, right? So when you get to the point of quitting, I see this all the time with moms that, want to feel fulfilled. And this is, more what I do when they go into wanting to create a business, but still be there for their children, still be there for their family, but have a flexible schedule, but actually produce a livable income, that makes them feel proud and makes them feel like every single day they're doing something, they're contributing to, their marriage or their kids or, whatever they want. I see all the time that they start, a network marketing business, whether it's essential oils or, whatever they're doing. Mm-hmm. They get to a point, they're like, this is too hard, I'm going to quit. But, people can be successful at that stuff. The women who are successful at these things are the ones who find the way to get it done. Right. They don't do, 2 or 3 months of it and not make an income. And then they're like, okay, well, I'm going to quit. I'm going to do something else. Right. They're the ones who are like, okay, what I'm doing right now isn't working. Where am I not seeing the issue? Where are my limiting beliefs stopping me from jumping forward into the next thing? Right. And so I see that, and I help women do the same because I was there. And back to when I was working in this new insurance marketing position, I was just feeling very unfulfilled. And every day it was like I kept hitting roadblock after roadblock. And because it wasn't my business and because I had no say in any of the decision making, I could see where success would be in my role, but I was being limited on what I could do. And it drove me crazy. And at the end of the day, I was so stressed and so unhappy. And I was just like, this is not what I want. Like, I felt like I was back where I was, a year ago. And even though this job brought me an income where I could purchase my house and I could live comfortably with my kids, it was tapped out. There was no more income coming to me. And, there were things in their business that ethically I didn't really believe. And so then I wasn't matching with them as, a business owner and an employee. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I knew I was going to quit. I was trying to get to a point. It's always, when is the good time to quit, right? There's never a good time. Like, you just got to do it, Right. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I've got 2 kids to feed. How am I going to do this? I had money and savings. And I knew at this point, I wanted to help women get out of the same funk that I was in, help them propel themselves, help them live this fulfilled life that we're all worthy of living. And it's just, we limit ourselves so badly. So I knew I wanted to help women get out of this and really go after, this entrepreneurial dream that they have, of creating something that's their own and feeling proud of it. And so I was like, okay, what can I do? I knew I wanted to do this. Gabby Bernstein, I was a follower of Amanda Francis, whom you and I have spoke about.
Right.
And so I was a follower of hers, and I was interested in taking some of her courses, but I was like, oh, that's, a big chunk of money. And here I am wanting to quit my job. And I was letting all these, fear thoughts come into play. And she had mentioned something about teaming up with Gabby Bernstein's Spirit Junkie course. And it was, if I purchased Gabby Bernstein's stuff, I would get some of Amanda's courses thrown in with it. And I was like, okay, this sounds like a good deal. Okay. I ended up making this purchase the same time I made the purchase last year on the insurance marketing course, the same month for the exact same price. And it was like $1,999. That was the total for both courses. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this feels like it's a sign, I said yes to this, and then now I'm saying, or to that, a year ago, and now I'm saying yes to this new thing at the exactly a year later for the exact same price. And I had kind of had an idea of where I wanted to go. I just knew I wanted to help women. I wanted to serve women. I wanted to teach them to do what I've been doing. And that night I prayed about it, and I just asked for guidance. And I said, if this is something that I'm meant to do, if this is the path I'm supposed to be on, will you give me a sign? Like, please give me a sign, because like I'm letting a lot of fear come into play. The next day, the 2 guys I worked for had contacted me and told me they were not renewing my contract. And so they're like, this is going to be it for you. And I was like, and I knew I didn't want the position anymore. So I was like relieved, and I was like, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I asked for a sign last night, and here it is. I asked, is this me pursuing this coaching with helping women? Is this what I need to do? Give me a sign. And then I got laid off from my job. And I was like, if that's not a sign that I need to be pursuing this even more, like full time, then, what is? And so I really kind of came into it that way, just, being guided to it.
And can I just say something about that? So this is something that I have noticed, and I've interviewed a lot of women who, they have quit their jobs, so they wish they could quit their jobs. And what ends up happening is it's very hard to be very comfortable in your job and decide the next day that you're going to quit. What normally ends up happening is that something pushes you out. Something happens that kind of like gives you that kick, right? So something that I tell women is that you don't know what that kick is going to be. In your case, your contract was going to expire. That was like, okay, then I'm doing this, right? But here's the difference between you, Micah, and somebody else who may have not been expecting that layoff, is that you, Micah, you were ready. You have been thinking about this stuff. You have been working on your mindset. You have been investing in yourself. So when this unexpected thing came, it didn't bring the world crashing down on you, right? It was the step up that you needed, right? So what happens to a lot of women out there is that they're not thinking about this. They're not thinking about their mindset or what they want to do or what, entrepreneurial venture they would like to start, because they keep putting it off because they have a cushy job, because they're fine. But then one day, when that is not there anymore, for whatever reason, I'm not saying that they're going to get laid off. I'm not saying they're going to get fired. They may not be in a job where those two things are usual, but something may happen. husband getting moved to a job on the other side of the country, or parents becoming ill. Like, you don't know what is going to happen in your world in the future, that your current seemingly secure job is going to continue to be there, and is going to continue to give you that security. So if you have ideas for a business, if you have things that you want to do for yourself, keep your job, hang on to it, but start investigating. There's nothing wrong with me listening to Amy Porterfield's podcast while I was working full time, and I wanted to create an online course, and I wanted to create a freebie and an opt-in and create my website, and all of that stuff is stuff that you can do on the side. It's not something you can quit your job about, but I want to make sure that when you can call it the universe giving you a sign, right? That, okay, it's time for you to shake things up, that you are going to be ready for it, right? Yes. And I know so many women just in the past year who got laid off from their job, and their jobs seemed secure. These are women who were my age or even 5 years younger than me. I'm not going to reveal my age
right,
because it is depressing. But, it's women who had a secure job that were just given a package, and they said, this is your last month. Yeah. So, but this is not the only reason to do this. Do you feel like your life should look differently? Then it's something that you have to take action on. It's not something you sit on the couch and wait for the universe to give you the kick, right?
Yes. And that's so great that you brought that up, because one of the very first things I do with my clients whenever I get in with them, I want them to think about their future, right? Mm-hmm. Because we get so comfortable living in this space of, well, I've got this steady income, and I've got, this, and I have these bills to pay, and even though it's not what I had pictured for myself, it's okay. It's good. I'm getting by. It's good enough for right now. And maybe one day I can go after. Well, one day is always going to be one day,
Yeah.
And so really you have to start thinking about it. You have to start putting the wheels in motion. So I sit down the very first time I meet with my clients, and I say, okay, look at your life 5 to 10 years from now, and journal out, describe exactly what you want your life to look like. Get into that moment and describe your ideal day. What does your life look like in an ideal setting? Everything, who's in it, who you wake up to in the mornings, what you do for a living, everything about it. And then after you're done, look at it, and then look at your life. And are you on the path to achieving that right now? And if so, that's fantastic. But if you're not, and frankly, a lot of us aren't, if you're not, start small. What 3 things can you do this way to do this week that will get you on the path to get you the life that you want in 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
And it's just small steps.
I'm going to tell you something. Sorry. I was listening to a podcast, and so there's a podcast called Cracked, and it's by, cracked.com. It's a comedy magazine, but they sometimes, I think they don't do this anymore, but they used to have this guy called Jason Pargin come on the show. And I always thought he was the smartest person in the universe, because he would just tell it to you straight. Mm-hmm. And he had an episode that unfortunately now is behind a paywall on Stitcher. That stinks. I hate it when they do that. But there was an episode called How Your Brain is Sabotaging You, or Why Your Brain is Sabotaging You. And it was an amazing episode where he basically walked through exactly that. He's like, if you think that in 10 years you're going to be, you're going to have the bigger house, or you're going to be, you're going to have your business, or you're going to have the $1 million, or you're going to have enough saved up, or you're going to have published your book, that book that is in your mind that you wanted to get out, but you're not doing anything about it now, then all you're setting yourself up for is you now plus 10 years.
Yes.
That is basically all you're doing is just you now plus 10 years older. That's all you're doing. So if you're not doing something about where you want to be in 10 years now, what are the chances you're going to be doing something about that vision tomorrow? Exactly. Or next week or next month? So, but today, if you're doing something about it today, I can guarantee you that 10 years from now, that will have grown, that will have turned into something. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because that's basically like, how I like to live my life is just like, okay, give me the end result. And this just like speaks to like my logical mind. This is just how I think. Give me the end result and let's work backwards from it.
Yes.
Right? So I really believe that I know so many people who have so many more aspirations for their life, but they're like, I have small children right now. I'm just not going to focus on that. Or I don't really have the money for it right now. Maybe later on. When is later? Small steps don't take $1 million to do.
Correct.
Right? They don't take changing your whole life to do. Is reading a book. Is starting with You're a Badass by Jensen Chero.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Get into the podcast, get into the books, just to change your mindset. And I assure you that action will just start springing out of you, right? Because you cannot live with the reality in your mind that you could be doing better and not take action.
Yeah, you gave me goosebumps. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you can live in a very complacent state for a very long time.
Yes.
Right? So it's a matter of getting you out of that state.
Yep. All starts there.
Especially for moms. I have 2 kids. I have a 1-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Oh.
And I started my business making websites during maternity leave for my first kid. So that was almost 7 years ago. And it was because every time that I would get a break from work, 'cause I was busy. I'm not going to say like, people are not busy. People live really, really full schedules. So as soon as I had maternity leave, to me, that was like, okay, Ina, you have free time. You're not going to be working. It's time for you to do whatever it is that you want to do. So every time that I would go on maternity leave, it's like something would flip. And like, okay, I need to work on my business now. But you know what? I didn't have to wait until maternity leave. And that was proven by me starting the business during maternity leave and continuing. And I still have, website support clients. I still have web projects that I just kept going throughout the years. And I was just doing them, mornings, weekends, nights. It's just knowing that your future is what you build starting now. And that it's all working towards something.
Exactly. A lot of limiting beliefs that women come into the place is, I don't have enough time. And yes, women, especially moms, are busy. They're constantly on the go. But there's always time, even if it's mapping out 30 minutes at the end of the evening, after kids are asleep, the kitchen's cleaned, whatever, you need to do. 30 minutes in the evening to meditate or get your mindset in the place that it needs to be, or, just working on these baby steps, or thinking, okay, what can I do this week that will get me where I want to be? And whether that's Googling something, searching for something that is in the area that you can learn more of, it's, or hiring a coach, it's all played into what you can do now. And you can always find an excuse not to do it. Or you can say, you know what, I'm ready, and I'm ready now. And I have turned away a couple of people who have wanted to take me on as a coach, but they liked playing small, and it was always, they always had an excuse, whether to not even show up for a call, or, I can't do that now, but maybe, and it's, no, you've got to be ready. You've got to be ready, because everything will pass you by if you're not. And 10 years from now, you will look back and you will say, I wish I started that 10 years ago, because I would be where I want to be right now.
I mean, that's me right now. I wish I had started all of this 10 years ago.
Me too.
Can you imagine where I would be right now if I had started all of this 10 years ago?
Right.
I kick myself that I started my business. I didn't know anything about online marketing or building an audience. And I wasted like 6 solid years of having a business, of having something to offer, and not putting it out there enough.
Yes. It's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. I've come to terms with it, but I'm here to make up for it.
Yes, exactly. We show up every day now because we're determined to have the life that, we envision for ourselves, that we know that we're worthy of.
Exactly. So going back to making time, that's exactly what you do. You make time. You are in control of how you make time. You know how I listen to podcasts and stuff? My husband bought me a Bluetooth speaker. Uh-oh. And I take it into the bathroom with me when I take a shower. And I told my husband, when I'm in the shower, I don't want you to knock on the door. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to come and tell me that the baby's hungry. When I am in the shower, that is my time
awesome.
that I know that nobody needs anything from me. And I would be there, 20 minutes, not the entire time in the shower, although I would have
Right.
loved that. But I'm in that bathroom for 20 minutes and just listening to the mindset podcasts, listening to audiobooks. Like, there's always time while you're doing the dishes, listen to your shows.
Yes.
Things like that. So there's always ways to make time, even if you feel like you're tapped out. And there are people who are tapped out that will still acknowledge that they could make a little bit more time. 5 minutes a day to listen to something.
Okay.
There's always time that you can make. Time doesn't control you, you control your own time.
Exactly right.
So, Micah, I could talk to you for like 2 more hours.
I know. I love this topic.
So, why don't you tell everyone how they can find you? By the way, where are you located geographically?
In Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Hi. Well, hello from Boston.
Oh, hi. I didn't know that either. Is it cold up there yet, or is it still warm?
It's super rainy today, but like it's been threatening to get cold.
Oh.
It's threatening. In the past few days, it's been like 85, but sometimes we get a 60 day.
Oh,
And
my
it's like,
goodness.
what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Ugh.
threatening. How are things in Oklahoma?
I think we have a heat index in the either in the hundreds or upper 90s today. So I'm ready for fall. Like, I'm a summer baby. I love summer, but it's been brutal this summer. I'm ready for it to cool off a little bit and
Yeah.
be able to go outside again.
In Massachusetts, we love our summer because it only lasts like 4 months out of the year. So, yeah, the other 8 months are just like blistering cold.
Oh my
But-
goodness.
But I'm looking forward to the holidays. I think it's going to be a great holiday season. I can't wait.
I think it is. It's going to be a good one. We're supposed to get more snow this year. Last year we got 2 snowstorms. One was the day before Christmas Eve, so we almost had a white Christmas. And then the other one was on Easter. We got this crazy snowstorm on Easter. It was the weirdest thing.
I think it was like 3 years ago. Like I said, I could talk to you for 2 more hours. But like, I think it was like 3 years ago. We had a Christmas at 70 degrees.
No.
I wore like a halter dress, like short dress with like no coat, no jacket, 70 degrees on Christmas Eve.
That is crazy.
It was
I bet
insane.
everybody up there was freaking out.
Yeah, it was insane. It's like, okay, well, global warming is just like,
I know. Wait,
it's like,
this is happening.
like, this is it. This is it. This is what people were talking about.
Yes.
Okay, so how can people find you? Where can they find your stuff?
They can go to my website at www.micahmarquette.com. And if they go /coaching after that, they can find my coaching services where I do one-on-one. And right now I have this group coaching, my first group coaching launch that I just launched a couple weeks ago. And the launch will end in October. And it's a 6-week coaching program, and I'm really pumped about it because you can gain so much in a group coaching session that you don't have in the one-on-ones that I really wanted to be able to offer that. So they can go on there and find that and message me whatever they want.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much for spending this time with us. I will put your website in the description of this podcast. And if anybody, I forgot to say this in the beginning, but if anybody actually wants to watch this conversation on video, just go to inacoveney.com/CT16. This is episode 16. So CT stands for Corporate Trailblazers. inacoveney.com/CT16. Micah, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was a blast. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.